Well, howdy everybody. It's Vince here with Real Talk with Vince. Today is, well, when you're seeing this, it's going to be Saturday. This is actually being recorded on a Friday. It took me that long to basically absorb what happened last weekend. And all I've got to say is I'm glad I have my cup of coffee, along with the appropriate, if I can make it show, mug. But that's not saying anything in particular. So I thought I'd come and just have a bit of a chat with a person who has been around just a little bit longer than me, right? He's a constitutional expert. He's also the inventor of the H2 fuel system, save system. So he knows all about hydrogen. And for those of you who watched Voice of Freedom and a few other programs, you would all know this gentleman quite well. His name is Mr. Tim Dwyer.
Hello, hi, mate. Tim. How you doing?
Right.
Good to see
you. I
had
the advantage of knowing Tim for 30 plus years, so he's educated me a lot in this, but I thought I might just bring him on and ask him what he thought about the election, knowing full well that it's a corporate government and constitutionally they shouldn't even be there. But I thought I'd just ask him what he thought about the actual results. I'm not asking him whether he voted or not, because that's a secret. But what did you think of the results, Tim?
Well, not surprising. To me, there was no surprise in the result. 3 weeks out, it was quite evident that the Liberal Party had rolled over like a pup and peed on itself. They just gave up. They weren't even going to put up a decent fight. And we know this because they were given documents that evidenced Anthony Norman Albanese's involvement in the Communist Party and then in the Search Foundation, which is the old Communist Party here in Australia. And they took the opportunity not to use any of that information in their campaign whatsoever. They just waffled on, and they didn't have anything going for it. And the other side of it is, I'm not surprised Albanese and the Labor Party got in, simply because when you look at the indoctrination of the compliant people that they've brought into this country. Now, we're going to get into the numbers in a little bit, but let me tell you what's going on out there in the real world. Recently, a few months back, we had the NBN go past our house putting fiber optic in. Everybody working on that gang was Sri Lankan. And so I'm talking to these people, having a yarn with them, and I said, why did you come to Australia? What was the attraction? Oh, he said, we have to get away from the communists. And his mate said, oh, yeah, communists, very bad communists, right? And I said, okay. I said, so you're here on a visa? Yes. And if you stay here, are you going to apply to stay here? Oh, yes. We become Australian citizens one day. And I said, oh. I said, so when you become an Australian citizen, who do you vote for? Oh, we must vote Labor. We've been told we must vote Labor because they bring us to Australia.
Really?
Yep. And I said to him, I said, well, it's interesting. I said, because you said you wanted to get away from the communists, but now you're telling me that you're going to vote for Labor, who are the communists in Australia. And you cannot deny it. It's not, oh, you can't say that. Yes, I can, because the documents are there. The evidence is there that the Labor Party are highly charged with the Communist Party. And think about it, the Chinese warships were right around Australia. They went right around our coastline. Now they were in international waters, but they put their own markers in just outside our markers. And that is an international signal for anybody to understand that is like a dog marking its territory, cocking its leg on every post. And Albanese and Penny Wong, all Wong wrong, they just sat there like good servants do when their master comes knocking. I knew it was going to be a Labor win. The question was, did I vote?
Well, we won't go into that. We don't want to put you in, but I'm pretty sure that if you didn't, you've got all the ammunition if they wish to take you to court.
Well, let me put it to you this way. Last 3 times when I didn't vote and they sent me a nasty letter wanting to extract fiat currency out of my pocket, I responded to them and said that I elect to be prosecuted in a court of law. The only court that could hear such a thing is a court of disputed returns, because it is a constitutional matter, not a state matter. And therefore, I'd be happy to introduce all the evidence I have in my defense via the Constitution. I'm a bit bloody ticked. Never once have they offered to take me to court. I don't know what you've got to do these days, right? Probably drive 10 Ks over the speed limit.
Maybe 4th time lucky.
Oh, could be.
Could be. Yeah. So just looking at what occurred, we know that there was a lot of various independent parties or minor parties that were running, and a lot of those were new parties that started this time round. Now, a lot of them had to wait to be properly registered by the AEC before they could even start. And effectively, that meant that while Liberal and Labor were out there polling and promoting and doing all this stuff, these guys couldn't do anything at all until they were registered. And of course, they really couldn't be on the sheet and running as a candidate until after it was called. Now, this is just my take on things, but doesn't it seem weird that they would pick the time to run this election, which had 4 days off for Easter? 4 days or 5? 4 days off for Easter, 3 days off the next week for Anzac, and they had all these people scurrying to get their pamphlets printed and everything done, which they could only do once they were elected, which was like about a week before Easter hit. So all these guys basically got bamboozled by the holidays. Now, do you think that was proper planning by their behalf?
Oh, I think it was planned perfectly. I mean, if you're going to rig a game, you've got to make sure you've got all your bases covered to rig every aspect of it, so as no one gets away with actually polling well. Because, look, Vince, you and I have been mates for a long time. We've covered a lot of these subjects, and there is, wherever you find a rigged card game, you never go back and play in that same game. The Labor Party and the Liberal Party are masters at manipulation. Look, I mean, you've only got to look at what they do as major dates come along, the public holidays, the grand final, Bathurst, and you look at the bills that they shove through Parliament on that weekend, and whilst nobody's paying attention, while everybody's focus is on the grand final of football or Bathurst or the America's Cup race, whatever you're into, they'll ram stuff through. This is no exception. The Labor Party have been out there, and the Liberals, they've been out there getting around the huskings for weeks and weeks and weeks prior to the election being called, right? They already had their thing going on. Like you say, the independents and the minor parties, they had to wait until they got their little tick from the AEC before they could even print anything. Because if you go ahead and get that printed and it's found out you printed it before you were a registered party, you're out. You're done. And so I believe it was done on purpose. He did have he had 2 extra weeks to when the election could have been called. So he could have called it right up to the 15th of the month, which would have given all the minor parties a lot better time to get themselves sorted. But no. Let's just jam it up. I am disgusted at what is termed democracy in this country, because it is far, far, far from it. It really is. You know, let me put it to you this way. I was listening to a lady speak the other day, and I was impressed with her terminology. So I've borrowed a little of her terminology. Our government, if we had a lawful government, it would be we the people created the creature of government, right? And the government, the people are above the government, and the government is above the citizenry. But the creature of government that we created has become an absolute monster, devouring the people. And they have no regard for the people. And I know we're going to go through some numbers in a minute. And I'll just show you through Vince's numbers what little regard the people have for what we today call government, because their shenanigans has just shown them up again.
Yep. Yeah. I was just trying to figure out, while you were giving a little rundown there, when pre-poll started. I'm not sure if it was 2 weeks before the election or 3.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
So,
and what a disaster that is.
Yeah, something I don't believe should actually occur. Okay, maybe a week, but if it's 2 weeks, I mean, the guys have barely, the independents and the new parties have barely even got their documentation out there, and people are making a decision already.
Yeah.
That's just wrong, I believe. It shouldn't be that way. But
no,
anyway,
I believe you should vote on the day.
Yeah.
On the day.
And if you can't, there are options. There's postal voting, and there is other options that can do that. So,
yep.
Yeah, it is very interesting. So, from our little chat here, you reckon that basically Libs just rolled over and died. The Labor did a really good job of campaigning, because they got their policies out there, and they managed to do a perfect smear campaign of Mr. Dutton. So, you have to ask yourself, why would I vote for somebody who's going to smear somebody else? That's really good. Honourable, note the word honourable, way of doing things. Yeah, not so honourable, but anyway.
No.
One of the interesting things to note is also with the AEC is the way that they handle their voting. Now, you often hear a lot of people will talk about that it's rigged, it's not this, but from the election workers that I've talked to that have been there, that have been in the polls, etc., they inform me that the count for the lower house is done there and it is checked. There was a lot of votes that weren't done properly. So, in other words, uneducated people or people who just didn't want to vote, either or. And the Senate votes on the night are also counted out for the first level of preference. And I should turn off my beeping email client. So that first preference gets counted out on the night, but not the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth in the Senate. And because the Senate's a very complicated counting process, and if you haven't seen my really boring video on that, it is on this channel, so you can watch it. Go find it. But the one thing that gets me about that, although we have to put all our trust in the AEC on the Senate side, due to the fact that that counting process takes a couple of weeks. but nobody is scrutineering it after the first level of votes has gone through. Nobody's got the money to pay someone to go and scrutineer it. So I think that's a challenge in the system. We're getting back to our main votes, though, in the lower house, right? That one, I think, is fairly well tied up, except for something that I probably should show you. Let me just pull up that window. And I'm just making sure I've got the right page before I do it. And I was getting carried away. I was trying to find out where Senator Rennick even stood a chance. And he might be in with a chance. There is a possibility. Right. So you never know. We may still keep Rennick. That would be very interesting if we do. Informational results. I have probably taken this page. That sucks. Sorry, people. Tim, take the floor for a sec, mate.
Well, it's interesting when we talk about the Senate. The Senate is supposedly where the checks and balances come into play, and no bill can be passed into law until it is passed by the Senate. And yet, if you look at how the Parliament behaved just before it closed down, they were ramming bills through and telling the Senate they didn't have time to look at the bills. They just had to pass the bills, and the bills were being passed. Now, what the hell's going on when a dictator style process under Albanese being the dictator can instruct the Senate just to ram stuff through? And you're talking about multiple bills, and they did it. What the? And
there is some discussion on that, though. I mean, obviously they can definitely force the bills up into the upper house, and if they have enough political clout in the Senate, for instance, the Liberal and the Labors agree, or Labor has enough votes that it doesn't care what the other side says, then it's going to get rammed through.
Yeah.
But the Senate's still supposed to be our filter, right? And that's where I think the Australian people have failed. They didn't put in a filter, right? They went ahead and went and put, let's rubber stamp this group. Bang, bang, right? Lower house has got the floor. So does the Senate. So it's a rubber stamp. That's not how it's supposed to work.
No.
But that's how they've been educated. Now, getting back.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry. Getting back to our lower house count, I'm going to take us off the screen and I'm going to put this up. This is the current polling places where it's at the moment. And I'll try and make it a bit, I'm on the wrong screen. Try that screen. A bit bigger for people. It's interesting to note that as we go down here, it says, like Adelaide, 66. Preferences, the polling is all first counting has been done. The two-party preferred, well, we just ignore that because that's a whole different kettle of fish. But here, has the counts been completed? See the yes, right? See the yes for Aston, for Ballarat, for Banks, etc. Notice this. It's a no. Bendigo and Victoria, for some reason, has 66 polling places, only 50 of which have been counted. Why? One must ask why, right? It's not finished. This was today, as of today, right? Friday the 9th. We keep going down, we'll find that we've got another no. There's another one for Brand in WA. That's only got one more polling place to go, so that's okay. That's nothing major. We'll go down a bit further. Here's another no for Farah. 94 polling places, only 79 counted. How can they be calling an election when, obviously numbers would say that these last few polling places don't aren't going to make a difference, but it doesn't mean they should stop counting. They should still be counting. That should be finished. Here, Fraser, 41-35, right? The one below it, Fremantle. That's only one polling place missing. So we'll keep going down. Actually, I'm just going to skip because there's a few that were through here. Well, let's get to somewhere really important. Melbourne, 46. And now that's gone up to 41. 2 days ago, that was less than half of that was counted. It was, well, just over half. It was 26 polling places have been counted. Now it's up to 41. So you have to ask yourself, what's going on there?
Yeah. Look, and Vince, I don't know. Look, I'm not full bottle on all the intricacies of how the AEC do things. But if we've had an election which is to be the voice of the Australian people, which whether it is or it isn't, we'll cover that maybe another day. But the bottom end of that is that if you're going to have an election, count all the bloody votes before you announce the winners. They were 2 hours in to the counting of the votes. West Australia had just closed and they waved the red flag and said Labor are in.
Yeah.
So...
Well, the ABC called it. That wasn't actually done by the AEC.
No, I know, but that was what the people were seeing, that, Labor's won, right, on the media. Yeah. That should not be allowed. Let the last vote, the person who voted last, and let the last vote be counted before it's all done, because all the preferences have got to work out. There's still seats, a couple of seats, that they're not 100% sure of who's going to sit. And yet it's important to the people who voted for those people, and it's important to those people who are maybe in, maybe out.
I remember the last election. It was like the Monday after the last election when Labor got in. Was it Mr. Albanese or Albanese? Was up there taking the oath of the Prime Minister, right? And I'm looking at it and thinking to myself, well, hang on a minute. Besides the fact that the oath of the Prime Minister is not anywhere in the Constitution, that makes no difference anyway. It's an oath to the country. But I'm thinking to myself, he's taking a position of a government position up for the Prime Minister when he hasn't even redone his oath to be a minister. Right? None of them have.
Nope.
Because they were still waiting for all the counts to be completed. None of them had gone in and taken their oath to be a minister, yet he was taking the oath to be Prime Minister. So one has to, isn't there an actual law that says about that? I'm pretty sure it's...
I think it's Section 42.
Is that the one in the Constitution?
Yeah,
talks about
Section 42.
pretending to be somebody you're not.
There's that bit. Well, that's part of the Crimes Act, that if you impersonate a government official with the intent for a gain, a personal gain,
which
then
Prime Minister would be a personal gain.
Only about $300,000 worth of personal gain over and above his ministerial salary. But anyway, it's I think it's 2 years jail per offence. So every day he fronted up in that capacity, it's 2 years jail. But anyway, that's only the law. Like, they have no interest in the law. And if you drive 10 Ks over the speed limit, holy hell, you're a criminal. You go into a criminal court.
Yeah, true. Exactly true. Now, going down another slightly different path, the elections happened. The corporate government has been worked out as we speak. The resistance from the people was pitiful. Or was it? That's the question. We're going to come up with two in a minute. But generally saying, everybody's reporting, the media are reporting that this was a mandate, that we gave the Labor Party a mandate. So it's interesting to look at what's been happening overseas and then compare it to us here in Australia. Number one, MAGA is a conservative party, full on won it in America like landslide. Just recently in Britain, I believe that Nigel Farr, who's also a conservative, is it Lafar or Farr? I'm trying.
Farage.
That's it, Farage. Yep. Right. He just, and his group just won it over there as well.
Yeah. They won a couple of local areas, and when the British people go to the polls, for the country, the Conservative Party will wipe out the equivalent of Labor here in Australia.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's something to look forward to. I mean, he won convincingly from what I heard.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely romped him.
Yep.
But we over here, because we get a bit confused, because over in America, they call the Democrats the left. Is that right? Or the right? I get
they're
confused.
the left.
We're the opposite.
They call them liberals.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but we're the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Over here, our liberals are the conservatives. Right?
Yeah, bit confusing.
Well, it's supposed to be, but yeah, so it's a bit shonky. So what we actually did, we didn't put our conservatives in, we put our wokies in.
Yeah.
But thank you very much, Australia. So once again, let's get back to the point that they had a mandate. They got given a mandate. That's what everybody's being told on the news. And if you look at the number of seats they picked up over the houses, over the lower house and the upper house, took out a couple of Greens and everybody else, you would think, yes, they got a mandate to go ahead and do it. But this is where figures come in. So what I'm going to do is bring up a little sheet here. This is the first stage count from the AEC, right? And what I want to do is bring that up. So I'm just going to add that to the stage so you guys can see us. Tim can now go and pretend he's doing something like drinking coffee or whatever. But what we actually have here, and I don't need to look at the screen because you guys can't see me, so that works. This is the count as directly downloaded from the AEC. So all the parties are down this side. We've got the number of seats contested. Interesting that Labor contested 150. Liberals only did 106, but that's neither here nor there. It shows your ordinary votes, the percentage that they say, the absentee votes, etc., all the way across. This end here is the important piece, right? This one's from the AEC. That's from the AEC. This is the one that I've added. It's called real percentage, and I'll explain that to you guys in a minute. Here is the total percentage of the votes, and that's including postal votes and stuff that have now come in, right? According to the AEC, Labor got 34.7% of the vote. Now, just to clear things up, 18,098,797 people were eligible to vote or registered to vote in this season. So 37% sounds like a lot, doesn't it, Tim?
Oh, well, 34.7%.
34.7, yep.
Right. Well, really, it's just a bit over a quarter. Right. But if you're going to look at that percentage, how could the minority rule the majority?
Well, it gets worse, right? It gets worse because the point is that these votes that you see, the percentages down here that you can see,
yep,
right? They add up to 100%. What? That says 105. You know why it says 105?
No.
Because this number here, 799,376 people made an invalid vote, which is 5.4% of the number of people that voted. Now, that's an important distinction, the number of people that voted.
Yeah.
Right? So, the number of people that actually voted is 14,813,187 and does not include that they're removed. So they get their 100% from that number there.
Yes.
Not the total number of people that were eligible to vote, but only those that literally came in and voted.
Right.
So that means that if we want to take a real percentage, we should really get the percentages from those eligible to vote, not those who only voted, including the ones who voted badly or not at all. Right? So if we look at those that voted there, the total number of people that was able to vote there, what we see is that 3,285,610 people did not vote.
Yep.
So if we bring that across, that's 18% of the eligible voters failed to vote. That's not including those that mucked it up. That's just the ones that failed to vote.
Yeah.
Right? If we look a little bit further and we add in that number there to there, we end up with basically 22% of the country failed to vote correctly or failed to vote completely.
Yep.
So that means really that only about 78% of the country voted, and that 78% in their votes brings them up to 100. So they take 100% of that. So that's how they get their 34.7. But if we work out the percentage of what was really should be, which is those that didn't vote, those that informally voted, plus those who did vote, the actual real percentage of this win at this stage of the game, there's still more votes to come, but at this stage, 26.87% of Australia voted for Labor. Yep. 16% voted for the Liberals. And then we go down the chain. Interesting enough, right, 22% didn't vote. So really, we were only 4% off having a no-vote party. Right? Yeah, we're running second. Right. Two-party preferred. We're now second.
Yeah.
Because all those people who didn't vote, you're now second, guys. Good on you. Well done. All right. So that's done. But here's one more interesting fact. When we take all of these here, right, and include the 22% that didn't vote, it meant that 73.13% of Australia did not vote or did not vote for Labor. 73.
Say that again.
So these are the real percentages. If we take every vote, but not Labor's, we don't take the Labor's into account, but we take every other vote that was given and a first preference, it comes to 50.56. So more than 50% of the people did not vote for Labor.
And then we add on those that didn't vote,
which is the 22%.
And 73%.
And those who mucked it up.
Yep.
All right. And by the way, guys, if anyone's checking, I did not include that 4.4% in that count. That 22% comes to 73% did not vote for Labor in one format or another. Either A,
So
they
Vince,
didn't mark them, or B, they didn't vote, period.
so what we're seeing is the concept of, oh my God, Labor's got a mandate. Look at the red all across the country. Is that 73% of the people, one way or another, are dissatisfied, disgruntled, and don't like the government.
That's it. That's it in a nutshell. That's the real numbers.
So I've got my, what do I call myself? My rebellious nature, my wild Irish rebel in me. My great grandfather would be very proud of me, I'm sure. But anyhow, he's not here to know. But think about this: 73% of the voting population of this country literally are not in favour of what the Labor Party is going to bring to the table. And they're going to bring some horrid things to the table. Make no mistake about it. Now, I'm not saying Liberal would have been any better, but what we can only work with what we've got to work with, and that's the Labor government. Now, as you know, I'm a great advocate for the fact that the corporation sitting in power at the moment, pretending to be government, they are sitting as belligerent occupiers of this country.
Correct.
And they have done it by fraud and deception, and they have great camaraderie with the mainstream media. So to try and get this message across, I was on 5AA the other day, and I put this point to them that the majority of people voted against the Labor Party. So I think it's time Penny Wong and her friends stop wobbling about we're having a great majority and we have an authority here to go through with what we want to go through. And they took it on the chin because they didn't have a choice really at that stage. But I think what we need to be able to do is try and figure a way to sing this song loud and clear that we have a situation whereby constitutionally we are operating under a fraud as the government today. And we do know that the entire West is under threat. I saw a great post today. Why isn't communist China complying with climate change? They don't have to. They've already got a communist government in, right? And that's where we're going to find ourselves with facial recognition, digital ID, the whole thing. We're going to find cars, all your new cars now, when they bring the new cars in, they all have to have a thing called geofencing in their electronics. So as that when you're driving down the road, if you haven't paid your duty or your tax or whatever, electronically the car will stop until you get on your phone and pay the fee or turn around and go home. Geofencing is in every new car. That's freedom for you. That's really good freedom. But I think from an election point of view, I think the Australian people, as complacent and as compliant as they are getting to the point where we've had a guts full.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I would hope that we would see a peaceful resolution to this. But John Fitzgerald Kennedy made a statement that said, if a government does not give its people a peaceful resolution, the government is forcing the people to a violent revolution.
Yeah.
Now, violence in this country is no answer. The only violence we need is against the Chinese warships and the troops when they start landing on our shores. But we don't have a military. And if we did have a military, we've got enough firepower, ammunition to last us maybe a day. But after that, we'd have to go to Costco or somewhere to buy bullets. I don't know. But So we are in a very interesting point. We can pontificate about all the hoo-has about the election, what went wrong, when did Liberal pull out of the game, all this sort of stuff. But on a serious note, I've told people now for a long time it is mathematically impossible to unseat the Liberal-Labor cartel.
Yeah,
You just
I
cannot
agree
unseat
with that.
Yeah, mathematically you can't do it. And so to sit there and go, oh, well, look, next year, let's get ourselves together and, the next election, we're going to do this. That's like a bloody football team who had their ass handed to them at grand final time going, oh, we lost by 20 goals, but next year we're going to win. Oh, for God's sake, stop.
Yeah, but the figures just show that it can happen.
But
73%,
because even
73% said they didn't want Labor.
Yeah, I know.
Right? But the challenge being, right, I admit, like, lower house, just forget, right? They're going to play their dual party preferred, and the whole voting is rigged on that anyway, because you're going to have one or the other. The Senate, that's where we could put some filters in, I would have thought. But, like you said.
Look, I admire the tenacity of people who'll run year after year after year and spend a fortune, and mental and emotional energy that goes into these things is just enormous. The two-party preferred system with the calculating of the preferential votes, it has its good points, but it has a lot of bad points from the perspective of the people, because if you've got a two-party preferred system, it's two parties preferred, not three parties, not four parties preferred, two parties. And the preferences must always roll up to Liberal or Labor in the majority of cases, because you've got to put them on there. Even if you put them last,
you're still going to get a vote.
Preference is going to roll up there, right?
Yeah.
And
it'll either be Liberal or Labor.
And truly, think about, I've lived a long time now. I'm over 70, and yeah, I'm the old bloke in the room now, right? So yeah, it's getting a bit grey, but anyway. But this is coming back black now. See, that's black, right? Anyway, enough of that. I have seen the best of this country. I have seen this country at its absolute best in the 60s and 70s and 80s. I have seen a time where Dad could go to work, Mum could stay home and look after the kids, and they could still buy a house and drive a car and have a beer and drink, have a smoke and eat good food. And I've seen that dwindle down now to Mum and Dad both having to work one or two jobs, put their brand new baby in the care of the government. And there's an old saying that says the hand that rocks the cradle forms the nation. So now you hand your baby over to daycare, which is all government run, and you expect to be able to pick up this beautiful little child and form it to your family's way of life, except it turns out you can't, because it's all changed. I've seen this country where you could leave work, if you went to work and you had a blue with the boss, you could walk out of there before lunch and have a job after lunch. Yep. I know, I've done that a few times. I've worked in the places where the shearing sheds were shearing, thousands and thousands of sheep. I've worked in the places where, there's 20 shearers roaring into the sheep and the rouseabouts are running like rats. Now it's hard to find a sheep. I have.
They're all dying in the drought because we can't get the hay over there in South Australia.
Yeah, because the South Australian government, for a start, offered the hay runners, I think it was $4.20 a kilometre to bring the hay across. Then they'd inspect the hay at the border, and if it wasn't up to speed, they'd send the hay back. And the other side of that was, I think it costs a bit over $6 a kilometre to bring the hay. So as much as the government says we've got $75 million for the farmers, yeah, it's a bit like Morrison's bushfire thing. It was a hypothetical theory, but anyway. So,
so looking at what's
but what we can do, Vince, what we can do is.
See, I got him on his soapbox now. He's going.
Yeah, I know, right? You can't expect Australia to come back to where it was when the thinking that we had at the time has all but gone. It's only us old blokes that carry that thought with us. And the new people think, oh, you know, I can do this and we'll get AI to do that and we'll do this and do that. That's great. But fundamentally, if you cannot control the voting of in your parliament, if that is out of your control, you can walk in and vote, but all roads must lead to the Liberal Labor Party. That is not democracy.
Yeah,
I believe we should go back to one vote per man or woman for one candidate. Now, let's put it this way: you're running as a candidate. I'm running as a candidate in the same electorate, and there's 10,000 people in our electorate. And the first one who has the majority of, so you get 5,001 votes and I get 4,099, you're it. Yep. There's no preferences. You got the job. They elected you, right? And I believe we would have, and also within our voting process, I honestly believe that the parliamentary privilege has got to be reeled in a fair bit, because we want men and women in our parliament that are really honourable, decent, humane, visionary people. We don't want career politicians and lawyers that use weasel words and slippery little bits and pieces to get their way through. We need to bring this country back. I don't want to take it back to driving E.H. Holdens. Nothing wrong with an E.H. Holden, but the newer cars, and I don't like the brand new cars, but the newer cars are better. But do you know what I mean?
I saw a classic HG Premier yesterday in top nick. 186 straight, nice, beautiful. Anyway, that was just a side thought.
Yeah. So get us some legitimacy in our electoral process that the people can be confident to vote in, and they'll vote. But don't give them a choice of, as I saw on one of the posts, you got to choose between syphilis or gonorrhea. Which one do you want? Not happening. And this is, the people have spoken. They have said by percentage that you worked out there that they have had an absolute guts full of this dribble we call government. It's time to dry it up.
Just seeing if I can really make this. There they are. That was the percentages. Just so everybody can see. All right. They're the people who mucked it up. 5.4% of people mucked it up, either deliberately or by accident or being poorly uneducated. Only 14,800,000, say nearly 15 million people voted. Of the 18 million that were capable, 3 million plus didn't even want to. 3 million plus. That has to say something.
Now, keep in mind, Vince, those 3 million people did not vote, even though they knew the AEC would send them a fine for not doing it.
Correct.
And still they didn't do it.
They still didn't do it. So that means what? Does that mean that we have enough people now who are seeing that the corporate government is illegal and theoretically by law you should not do something to help illegal acts, and by not voting they didn't help an illegal act, so theoretically they're following the law, so I can't see how they could be charged. But anyway, so 4 million people informal, or did not want to vote. 22% of the country. That's a big number. That is a really big number. So what do you think the next 3 years are going to bring to all of those who are not part of this 22%? All those who did go ahead, and even some of us who voted. I was hoping to get at least one decent senator in. I knew the lower house was lost, but still. Where do you believe, or are we going to hit so much pain in the next 3 years that something might change? Or do you don't think that the Aussie spirit is here anymore? Right? And just what I mean by Aussie spirit, if I can do it, that one.
Yep. Mate, there's John Williamson had a song, Hey True Blue.
Oh, yeah, love
Is
that.
it me and you? Don't tell me it's over. Tell me you've knocked off for a smoko and you'll come back later on. I'm hoping they've just knocked off for a smoko, because what I'm seeing at the moment in my beautiful country is I only have to look back over the past 4 years and watch what my countrymen did to themselves by the threat of violence or the threat of poverty. Fear is the enemy of this country and everybody in it. The concept of fear that's driven by any political party against the citizenry or the people, whatever you want to call it, can only be at law, on international law, described as terrorism.
Yep.
And when a corporation, by whatever name they wish to call themselves, force millions of people to take an experimental medical device, which turns out has...
Actually, before you go down that path, Dr. John Campbell yesterday just released a medical paper that's talking about myocarditis and pericarditis. And apparently this paper is the bee's knees. It is published in the Medical Heart Journal and been peer reviewed, from what I understand. It might not be peer reviewed, but it's been published. And the facts and figures in there are all saying exactly what medical intervention we got back in 21. Right? Not everybody. Some of us were smart and didn't take it. Yeah. But it's just interesting that that's come out now, and it's irrefutable proof.
So what was happening was our countrymen, through fear and intrepidation, but fear of what might happen. Oh, I'll lose my house, I'll lose this, I'll lose that. Fear is the weapon that terrorists use against any group of people. And whether it's Liberal or Labor, they have used the weapon of fear against the populace. And our people, our Australian people, to the great majority, said, oh, okay, she'll be right, I'll do it. However, I think what they've learnt now is that whatever the Labor government bring next, it's going to be, first up, it'll be the voice, which will be legislation. So again, we have to understand that from a constitutional point of view, they can legislate whatever they like. It's not law. However, that's another argument for another day. But they will bring in a terrible, terrible something that will create fear in the hearts and minds of our beautiful people here in this country. And all I want to say is this: all is not lost, and it's a long way from it. But if you succumb to the fear, if you hear on the radio that something horrid is happening, or on the television something dreadful is about to happen, that is the seed of fear that comes from pure evil, and it's a weapon of terrorists. Don't fall for that again. You fell for it once, don't fall for it again, right? There is a process in place that I'm not talking about right now, but there's 20. What do we got there, Vince? We got.
But that's the 22. These 22% of people here aren't fearful of getting a fine from the government.
Yeah.
Right? They're either prepared to pay their $20 or they're just saying, stuff it.
Yeah, I'm not paying.
That 73% of people don't even want the government. So how many of them are no longer fearful?
That if we can tap into those 73% of the people and give them a lawful, legitimate system,
way
forward, whereby they benefit, their families benefit, the country benefits, and in doing that, if we can tap into that 73%, we can then re-establish this country's lawful parliament in a way that has no violence to it. It has every benefit that a free country should have. And when the outline of that comes and is put in front of them, I think we'll see more than the 73% decide that I think we're done with the two-party program. I think we're done with the corporate government, because there's a legitimate alternative that we can stand on lawful ground and become free people, not enslaved people. You buy your house, you got to pay your rates, and up and up and up and up it goes. That's an unlawful tax, because you're being taxed on an unrealized gain for a start. You know, the mining money that should be coming in, right? The people, that belongs to the Commonwealth. The people are the Commonwealth, not the landmass. The people are the Commonwealth, and those mining royalties should be split up amongst the people. It's theirs, all people, black people, white people, everybody on this land. If you're an Australian, you have a share in it.
Yep.
Anyway,
indeed.
So, Tim, mate, I want to finish off with this if I can. I know you've got to get going.
Well, I'm not the one who has to get going, mate. You are. You're the one who's popular at the moment, all over the place.
I got.
What's that one? Hang on, let me put you back to full screen again.
Okay. All right. Can you see that? It's backwards. It's backwards. It says it's no longer our job to wake up the sheep. It's time to wake up the other lions. And out of that 22%, they're our lions, but there's more lions dozing, resting, perhaps, in that 73%. And I'm not talking about going to march on Parliament. I'm not talking about waving a banner or a flag. I'm over that stuff. I've done that. We've been there, and it just keeps going, right? And it just gives the Victorian Goon Squad another target to hit. So in what we're going to do, Vince, is this country is too good to let it go down the gurgler.
Yeah.
The people in this country have come so far and done so much and contributed so much to the world. We can't let it sit here and become a third world shithole as the Labor government would have it become.
Okay. Before you get too carried away, all right, because we have run out of time. We're just hitting on our hour now. So, and I know people would love to sit there and listen to you, because in fact, you're actually going to be going out and doing a bit of presentations soon, I understand, which is something else for people to look forward to. We will get Tim back on to discuss that and have a discussion about that a bit later. There's also some very interesting stuff coming down the track. So keep your ears peeled, people. Tim's website is running across the bottom. All right. Specifically, flag that website, put it in your bookmarks, come back and visit it because it might be changing soon. There might be something happening. So just thought I'd let you know, a little inside secret, okay? But Tim, mate, pal, I have one other question. Did you get optic fiber to your house?
No, not yet.
Oh, I thought you said that they were going past.
It went right past. And I said to them, I said, well, can you guys run the fiber into my house? Oh, no, that's not our job. You got to get separate contractors in to do that.
Right.
So
Well, that's NBN. So theoretically, I don't know if what they've done, but theoretically, if it's available,
yeah,
you just say, Aussie, can I get fiber here now? And if they say, yeah, it's a zero upgrade, I think, and they just come and pull the fiber in where your telephone wires went.
Yeah.
So anyway,
that could be good.
That's something totally different. But I thought you had it for a second.
No.
My daughter just informed me that she's got fiber to her place down in Christie Downs. They just came through and just upgraded her to fiber, right? And she's getting like 1,300 megabits per second or something because she's so close to the unit, to the box. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, we're only 2 houses away from the node.
Yeah, you're lucky person. Yeah. Unlike me, who's 750 meters away, and I get 50 megabits. But anyway, that's something totally different. All right, Tim, thank you very much. You got a busy, you've got a busy night. Not that anybody's going to see this till tomorrow anyway.
Sure.
But if you didn't, or if you're seeing this tomorrow, come back and have a look at Tim tonight. He is going to be talking with a special person, which is
Guru and Carl Leibold on Guru Show.
Yeah, and I'll just remind you, it's Leibold, otherwise he'll hit you. Anyway.
Oh, he does, Leibold. Yeah, sorry, Carl. Sorry.
So Guru and Carl will be live on Guru's show tonight, and Tim will be there, and they'll be discussing a whole heap of things to do with medical, I believe, and probably a few other bits and pieces.
There could be a few other little bits and bobs going on. You never know what us 3 larrikins might get up to.
Indeed. So if you haven't seen that, go back and watch that, because I've got to remember this is tomorrow's broadcast, not today. So thank you, Tim, for coming and having a general chat, a real talk with Vince. And I hope to catch up with you soon.
Thanks, mate.
I know I will, because you're going to ring me and say, can you do this? And can you? No. Anyway.
Oh, look, guys, I got to tell you, for years and years and years and years, Vince has been my go-to guru for anything to do with technology. And I can remember when we first started getting computers, and I'd say to Vince, look, what I know about a computer could be inscribed on the head of a pin with a crowbar. Now, I've got a little bit better since then, but I still need my internet guru, my computer guru, my everything technical guru is Vince. How he does it, I think it's just white man magic.
Yeah, something like that. We should actually be pretty fair now and explain that head of the pin is bloody huge now, right?
Yeah, well, I've got a rough one here.
House. You're still using the crowbar, but the head of the pin is now the size of a house. Yeah. He's much, much better. And as you will see from watching him on the Rumble videos, Tim's Truths, right, you'll find him there as well. So go check him out. Best constitutional person that I know. Thank you very much, Tim. I'll catch you later, mate. You go off and go and hug your wife for me. Okay?
Yeah, I'll do that. And I'll see all you guys later on. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks, Tim. Cheers. Bye. Oh, I cut him off just as you were saying bye. All right, people. Honestly, it's an interesting thought. Just to show. Right? 22% 73% of the country didn't want anything to do with Labor. Just making a point. And yet we have majority rule. Yep. Carl brought up something the other day about people being able to combine all the freedom groups and all the various parties combining. That is something we probably need to do. We need to not be shooting at each other, even the freedom groups fighting amongst each other. We're going to have different ideas, but generally we all want the same thing. We all want this country being free. I'm going to be having chats with other people over time with different thoughts about medical, about electricity, etc., and so on. Some of the misconceptions that might be out. For instance, what can a smart meter and a smart meter not do? I'm going to try and get a hold of a fully qualified person who knows all about them and see if we can have a discussion about that. But generally speaking, if not, I might just come on and rant, because sometimes I can rant. And if we get a couple of lives going, maybe you guys can rant at me. Anyway, from me, from Real Talk with Vince and the FBN Media Network, I'd like to say good night, sleep well, get it now while you can, because what's coming in the next 3 years, you might not get much sleep at all. So from me, I'm going to say cheers and find my thing, which is that one. Bye.